Hey, Nick. And Garrett. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and thank you to Garrett for such a great session. As a reminder, we host these workflow demos the last Wednesday of every month, and they're all recorded. And so there's actually 15 different workflows now shared to the Posit website, but also the Posit YouTube where you all saw this video. So from building a model annotation tool to pins, workflows, to deploying APIs. I'll share that full playlist with you here in the chat in just a second. But while I know many people joining today are current customers, if you are new to Posit Team and would like to try it out for free or want to chat more with our team about the Posit and Databricks integration, we'd love to set up some time to chat. I know some of the questions here are hard to answer through just the one question in the chat. So if you want to schedule more time with us, let me share this with you as well. There we go. But before jumping into our Q&A here, I do also want to add that if you're interested in diving deeper into using Databricks with R, Edgar from our team is leading a workshop at PositConf 2024 in August in Seattle. And so you can learn more about the workshops on our website. I'm trying to share the links as I talk as well, but here's a great post that gives more details on all the workshops too. So jumping back over to our Q&A, thank you so much, Garrett, Isabella, Ryan, and Nick for joining us today. Do we want to go around the room and maybe do some brief introductions and say hi to everybody? Ryan, you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, everybody, my name is Ryan. I'm a data science advisor here at Posit. So I just help folks get used to using our professional tools. And a lot of times that means getting used to our open source tools as well. So I do a lot of trainings, webinars, workshops. I've hosted a few of these sessions in the past. I'll also be doing a workshop at conference. So if you want to learn more about how to use Posit's tools with a little bit more of an R focus, I'll be hosting one of those workshops as well. And I'll hand it over to Isabel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Isabella Velasquez. I am on the developer relations team at Posit and really enjoy talking about R, Python, and all of the suite of Posit tools. I won't be having a workshop at Conf, but I will be there. So looking forward to meeting you. And I'll pass it to Nick.
Hey everybody, name's Nick Pelican. I'm a senior solution architect at Posit. So what I do is I help our customers understand how Posit's products can work best with their enterprise data stores, things like Databricks. So I've been in Posit for about a year. Before that, I spent about 10 years working with Databricks in various capacities, data engineer, data scientist. So happy to answer any of your questions there. I will also be at Conf. I am TAing Hadley's workshop, and I'm also giving a talk on data contracts. So please come.
Awesome. And Garrett, I know you introduced yourself in the beginning, but you want to introduce yourself again here?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Garrett. I'm on the developer relations team here at Posit, and I co-developed that demo that we went through with Isabella. And like Ryan, I will also be teaching a workshop at PositConf on getting started with using Shiny for Python. So if that interests you, I hope to see you there.
Awesome. And I realized I forgot to introduce myself when I started here too. So hi, I'm Rachel Dempsey. I lead customer marketing at Posit. And so I host a variety of different community events and love to get people together. So I'll do a quick shout out for one of those other opportunities. Every Thursday at noon Eastern time, I host a data science hangout where we're joined by a different featured leader from the community to answer questions from you all. And I'd love to see you there too if you want to join us. So let's jump over into our questions. So I know there was, back in the YouTube with the demo, there were a few questions that kind of touched on this topic about why don't you use Databrick notebooks to do all the analysis and avoid the process of connecting to Databricks from R Studio? And Ryan, I don't know if you want to get started on that one.
Yeah, I can at least touch upon it, but I'll certainly defer to other folks here on the call. But it's really about using the development environment that you enjoy. Now, if the notebooks built within Databricks are kind of what you prefer to use, we certainly aren't going to tell you to not use those. Go for it. But we know so many folks have learned to love the R Studio IDE, have loved to use Visual Studio Code, especially now that we have those packaged within Posit Workbench. We just want to make sure that you have the ability to access the data to continue those analyses within those the R Studio IDE, VS Code within Posit Workbench. So it's really more just about being able to use the IDEs that you love and being able to pull in the data from Databricks. So that's kind of my 2 cents, but I'll certainly open up to anyone else if they want to add some more context.
Yeah, I'll 100% echo what Ryan said. Totally agree. It's all about using the tool that you feel most comfortable in. One of the great things about using the Posit tools with Databricks is that you get access to all of the power of R Studio, if you're familiar with that, or especially I'm a Python dev, so for me, VS Code very near and dear to my heart. The VS Code on Posit Workbench integrating with Databricks is fantastic because you have access to all of the extensions that make VS Code so great.
Thank you. So another question that was asked a little bit earlier in the demo was, don't you have to set the engine to sparklyr or something for running in a remote cluster? And Nick, I think you maybe want to be the one to answer this one.
Absolutely. So taking a look at that demo, so what you saw Garrett using there is the ODBC package. With the ODBC package, you've got 2 different options. You can run against Databricks clusters or Databricks general purpose compute. What that's doing there is the ODBC connector is just sending Spark SQL to the cluster. And that's it. You can also use the ODBC connector to connect to Spark to connect to Databricks SQL warehouses. So that's the Databricks SQL only compute. sparklyr is really only required if you want access to almost the full supported Spark API. So all of the things that you can do with Spark outside of Spark SQL. So things like ML model fitting, accessing external data stores, all those things that Spark SQL doesn't necessarily do, that's where sparklyr comes in.
Thank you. And I know a few people jumped over from when we first opened up the Q&A. So I just want to remind everybody that you can ask questions anonymously if you want using the Slido link I shared in the chat, but you can also just post them right into the YouTube chat here. I see Ben did that, so let me pull one of Ben's questions over. Do you have any recommendations for data exploration when connecting to a database like Databricks? For example, I love using SCIM-R, but I need to collect the data first. Garrett, you want to take a first step of that one, or?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for that, and maybe someone else here does, but I think you just need to make a strategy and use tidyverse code sent over to make your own counts, or I'm not sure if DB Pli handles this summary function, but basically to recreate that yourself. Yeah, I can't say anything better than that. One thing is, if you don't know what's inside the Databricks database, so I think the connections pane and the fact that it shows you what's there is really a helpful way to get started. And you can use that pane to learn a little bit about the data sets, like the types of the data and the column names and that sort of thing. So that's another way to get started.
Yeah. Another thought, like as shown in the workflow too, is if there are any kind of dplyr verbs that you can apply before you collect the data, to go ahead and do that first, and then continue your analysis after you've run collect.
Thank you. And I know, Nick, you had answered Zegp's question before, and apologies for mispronouncing your name, but there was a follow-up there, and it was, then the model was trained in the Databricks cluster?
Yes. Yeah. So if you're using any of the Spark ML APIs, that trains the model in the Databricks cluster.
But in this demo, we weren't training in the cluster. We were just pulling the data over to R and keeping things there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's that's really kind of showing you the power of Workbench, because Spark ML, if you've used it, that's kind of a limited set of machine learning models that you can use. One of the great things about using Posit Workbench with Databricks is that you can then, if you need to train something that potentially you couldn't do, it's not supported in the Spark ML API, you can 100% do that locally on your Posit Workbench cluster.
Thank you. I'm going to jump over to Slido and see if there's some questions I missed over there. And there's one from Gabe that was, what is the difference between connecting with ODBC and DB Pli to a local database versus database on Databricks? Is it just about the connection setup?
Well, I could say from the developer perspective, it is almost 100% about the connection setup. One of the things that's new for this demo is the ODBC Databricks function, which uses the Databricks driver, so you could connect with ODBC. That's specifically for Databricks. You use something else there. Now, under the hood, I'm pretty sure there's other stuff going on, but it's just not very salient to my role. Maybe Nick, with your experience with Databricks, would you know of things that we should be aware of?
Honestly, it is just like connecting to using the ODBC driver to connect to Databricks, whether that's the Databricks clusters and general purpose compute or to Databricks SQL warehouses, versus connecting to something like Postgres or like a DuckDB you have running locally. Again, it's just changing some connection parameters. It's all SQL down at the bottom, and it works just like your regular SQL connection.
Thank you. So I've been trying to copy over as many links or resources when we mention something, but I did just want to add the demo that you all saw. The recording is available right now, and in the details below, I put all of the helpful resources, and I'll be sure to edit that and add any new ones that we discussed too. One other question, which goes back to like the different ways to use R or R Studio with Databricks. And Shashir asks, I thought there's a way to use R Studio IDE within Databricks. Is that not the case any longer?
I can take this one. So Shashir, yes, there is still the possibility to run the R Studio IDE within a Databricks cluster. Just to kind of give you the high level of that architecture, what you're doing there is you're taking the open source R Studio server and deploying that onto the head node of your Databricks cluster. The issue with that is that what you're doing there is to run that R Studio IDE, that Databricks cluster has to be running. So all of that Databricks compute, which as we all probably know can be pretty expensive and is really optimized for data manipulation, is now being used for coding. So what that ends up doing is now, if you're just developing a Shiny app, if you're doing some documentation in Cordo, you're then incurring Databricks compute costs to do that development work. So it's really not a very cost-effective solution. So that's kind of what we did as part of this partnership with Databricks is we built connectors so that you can have Posit Workbench running in a much more or a cost optimized environment, and be connecting to Databricks compute. So you can use Posit Workbench for what it's best for, and you can use Databricks for what it's best for, and you can cost optimize from there.
Great, thank you. One other question that just came into the chat is, how is tidymodels supported for remote clusters? I don't know if you need more clarification on that question or if that's good.
I will defer to everyone else on that one because I am not an R dev at all.
I did want to mention to this question, I think your last question, Segpi, the one thing that is also available with Sparkly R is the ability to create user-defined functions. And so the ability to use R code and then apply it's called the Spark Apply function to be able to run that within the clusters themselves. And so please keep an eye out on the Posit blog. We will have a blog post specifically using the same prediction example, but with Sparkly R and using user-defined functions to kind of push that computation over to Spark, as opposed to doing it, either locally or through a REST API.
Yeah.
And Isabella, I know you shared a blog post with me using the New York City taxi data. Is that the one you're talking about, or is that another example?
This is a blog post that's coming out.
Okay.
Not yet. Please keep an eye out. But I'm happy to share that blog post that kind of shows the setup example of using Sparkly R and its functions, and then also, as Garrett mentioned earlier, the ability to see the Databricks table within R Studio, so you don't have to switch back from the way that I would do it is the IDE and then my browser, or however else that you're looking at your Databricks data.
So if I could just clarify this question, Zigby, until now, we would say tidymodels you run locally. It's R code. And if you wanted to run your computations on a cluster, you'd use the ML functionality of Spark through Sparkly R. But now there's the opportunity to create user-defined functions, and we anticipate that's going to be the path going forward. And so please stay tuned for that blog post that Isabel's writing, and they'll start to sketch out the strategy for using tidymodels back inside the remote cluster.
Thank you. Okay, so give me just 1 second to try and copy some questions over from Slido. But another question that just came in was, could you elaborate a bit more on the differences of running the models from within Workbench versus from within Databricks?
Well, I could paint a simple picture there. Databricks generally will have much more compute that runs much faster with much larger data sets inside of Databricks. The large data sets will be living in Databricks. And so if you could run your compute there, you'll be paying Databricks for that compute, but you'll have a faster experience in general. You could also run your code in your Workbench session. That's what you do if you weren't connected to Databricks. And it might be a little slower. Generally, it's not something that's going to limit your work. But if you're working with R and you have the data inside of R, you are constrained to data that fits there. And you can buy more server space for your Workbench, but if you think about the world, generally Databricks is going to have larger data, faster compute, and R is going to have more modest compute and more modest size data. But the code that you write in R, people tend to think is more intuitive and friendly. And to be honest, many modeling scenarios and use cases don't require the full data set. People seem content to work with a smaller data set or a sample of their data in R.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that from kind of the Python side as well. We find that these development environments really give you the ability to iterate quickly, and because you're not constrained to what's supported by, let's say, the Spark API, instead you can test every model under the sun. You can do functions that may not necessarily be supported in Databricks. That's kind of the beauty of Posit Workbench, is there's no constraints. If it runs in R or Python, it'll run on Workbench. So that gives you the ability to really experiment, really fine-tune down to the best candidate models. And then really once you're ready to go to production, what I see a lot of folks doing is that's when they start training on the big data. That's when they start putting compute into Databricks. So you've got, again, the best of both worlds.
Thank you. I know we're a few minutes to the top of the hour here, but I see one other question we hadn't answered yet from Shashir, and it was, any thoughts on how to manage packages and package versions on Posit Workbench? I see Ryan nodding. I see who wants to take this one.
I mean, I can start a little bit because, with this question asking about how to manage packages on Posit Workbench, we do also have one of our other professional tools, Posit Package Manager, which helps simplify a lot of the package management. It does exactly as its name implies. We also have ways, we have a public instance of Package Manager, so you can install various packages on CRAN or PyPI. So there are methods that we built out and tools that we built out to help manage the packages specifically within Posit Workbench. Now, Obviously, you're going to be running code on the Databricks cluster. There might be kind of an added layer of complexity there. So maybe I'll defer to someone else in the call if they want to talk about that.
I know we are chatting in our private chat here about a few coming soon things. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say some of those coming soon things or not.
Maybe I'll just say stay tuned for
Okay.
some of the package management and Databricks stuff.
Sounds good. Let me just do a quick check to see if we missed any questions here. I don't see any over on Slido. Let me do a quick check here in the chat as well. But just want to say thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today for the demo. I know sometimes when you're not in the room with us here live, it's kind of hard to ask follow-up questions. So if you do want to chat one-on-one with our team, I'm just going to share this link here again in the chat where you can just book a call with the Posit team. We'd love to chat more with you, but huge thank you to Garrett for leading the demo today, and Isabella. I know you both worked on this demo together, and Ryan and Nick for jumping in for the Q&A as well. Great to get to hang out with all y'all and see you today. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.